And we think
down,
that's pretty
burn.
pathetic, kind of. So we make up titles that are funny to us or nostalgic to us or in jokes to us. And I think that a lot of people kind of either get confused or can't tie them into the song, but to us they read as clear as like Aesop's Fables or the Bible.
What's your favorite song? This is a serious question. If your favorite song doesn't have more than 5 words in the title, then you are lying. Hey, that should be a song title. In the 2000s, it was common to see song titles that were long enough to make it as a sentence, in genres such as emo, metalcore, indie rock, and even pop music. Artists or bands use long song titles as the concept of the song, or sometimes the song titles are very random, they have nothing to do with what the actual song is about. Today, long song titles are very relevant compared to how they were, but where did it all begin with long song titles? How did they become popular in the first place? And why was it so common for every emo band to use that? Song titles have been commonly short since the creation of music, when many popular songs come from 1 to 5 words. If you look up the most popular songs of all time, you will find songs with short titles. Sometimes you'll see popular songs with more than 5 words, even before the 2000s. So where did long song titles begin? It's really hard to look at the first songs with long titles, but the earliest trend I can find so far started in the 60s with the famous band The Rolling Stones dropped their single Have You Seen Your Mother Baby Standing in the Shadow in 1966. This was the longest title when it was released, and probably the earliest one with a long song title more than 6 words since it has 10 words. In 1969, rock band Pink Floyd released their 4th album, Uma Guma. One of their title track was several species of small furry animals gathered together in a cave and grooving with a pick. The song itself wasn't an actual song since Roger Waters was making animal noises and mixing in at various speeds to make them realistic. When the 70s started, short song titles were still around, while many artists really used long song titles. A few bands or artists used them, but the songs wouldn't be popular and would remain underrated by fans. Even Pink Floyd and the Rolling Stones only used them once. During the 80s, the most popular band that used long song titles was The Smiths. Although they weren't big in the West, the Smiths were popular in the UK music scene in the 80s. Their song titles tend to be more than 4 words, with some more extended titles being the most popular ones like The Boy with the Thorn in His Side and Last Night I Dreamed That Somebody Loved Me. The Smiths weren't the only mainstream musicians to have long song titles in the 80s. In the US, other artists such as Janet Jackson and R.E.M were also using it, and both ended up blowing up. Another side of the US, another genre that was taking place in the hardcore punk scene in Washington DC that would change the genre forever. In 1985, the Revolution Summer began when many bands in Washington DC such as Rise of Spring, Embrace, and Dag Nasty. Fun fact, all of these bands were part of Discord Records. Rise of Spring released their debut self-titled album which pioneered the emo genre that Embrace and Dag Nasty decided to make an emo, or back then, Thrasher used to call it an emo-core album like Rise of Spring did. While most early emo bands were in Washington DC, Moss Icon was formed in Maryland in 1986. Their music was loud and had the amount of Meltdown, which in 1988, they released their EP, Hated Me. The second track on this EP, I'm Back Sleeping, or Fucking, or Something, was the early example of long song titles done by emo bands. Moss Icon split in 1991, but after their breakup, their only album, Libernum, was released by their label and became iconic to the emo genre. So, I forgot to mention long song titles that have nothing to do with the actual song is about. I know what you're thinking. Why didn't you mention this earlier? It's the same thing as finding the first long song titles. It's hard to find, but that didn't exist until the 90s, so we're now entering the 90s. In 1991, DC post-hardcore band The Nation of Ulysses dropped their debut album, 13-Point Program to Destroy America. They had one random song title that was called A Kid Who Tells Another Kid It's a Dead Kid. And that was the start of their random long song titles that has nothing to do with what the actual song is about. Come to think of it, Nation of Ulysses was an early band with various long song titles. Okay, they didn't have many of them, but their titles gave me the 2000s band vibe whenever I read them. The trend was rare in the 90s, but we'll see that being widespread by the next decade. In the mid-90s, alternative rock was the most popular genre in which two of the band's artists, Beck and Manic Street Preacher, used long song titles. In 1995, a year after the second wave of emo began, done by Sunny Day Real Estate debut album Diary, Chicago-based band Cap'n Jazz released their only album. Do I really have to say it? Burritos, Inspiration Point, Fork, Balloon Sports, Cars and the Spokes, Automatic Biography, Kites, Kung Fu, Trophies, Banana Peels We Slipped On, and Eggshells, Sweet Tippity Told Over. Or if it was that too long to say it, Schmap and Schmash for the short title. The album did not succeed, but it did help pave the way with many newer bands using long song titles, and many second wave emo bands starting to use long song titles. It also received a cult following for emo fans and music fans. By the mid to late 90s, emo bands used long song titles, although most of their albums only had one long title track, instead of various tracks. So here's a long list of emo songs with long song titles. There's no way I can talk myself out of this one tonight, the drinking song, by Texas Is the Reason. When Summer's Over, Will We Dream of Spring, by Cursive.
A safe position, back against the wall.
Do the Lovers Still Meet at the Chiang Kai-shek Memorial, by The Fan Pelt. I Love You So Much Is Killing Us Both, by Jawbreaker. The Fast Spoils of America, From the Badlands Through the Ocean, by Saves the Day. And various tracks of Reggie and the Full Effect album, Greatest Hits, 1984 through 1987. After the Cap'n Jazz album, long song titles became a trend in the late 90s. Not only was emo using long song titles, but other genres such as metalcore and indie rock were also using them to express how they don't care how long the titles can be, as long as the track titles make sense, or sometimes don't. They just want to have fun and not be forced by the corporate music industry at that time. Boy, that aged badly. The new millennium has arrived, and I'm about to tell you that the 2000s was the best decade for long song titles. In the early 2000s, you see more bands using very long song titles. Not only did they use one track, but various long title tracks on their albums, like look at Owl's self-title and Norma Jean debut album track lists. They didn't care how long the track's title would be. Many bands were jumping on long track titles as the newer bands arrived. In 2001, Jimmy Eat's World single, The Middle, became a big hit and was the early success in the emo genre. In 2002, both The Used and Taking Back Sunday released their debut album, and both were successful. The most popular tracks on their album has long song titles. They weren't popular when they debuted it, but got some recognition on big media like MTV and Fuse. The same year, MCR released their debut album, I Brought You My Bullets, You Brought Me Your Love. Although the album wasn't as successful as the last two bands I mentioned, they will change the music in 2 years later, so we'll get into that in just a second. In 2003, Fall Out Boy, the king of long song titles, dropped their debut album, Take This to Your Grave, which was a minor success. Yes, I know the charts was very low, but it still got a little attention. 2004 was an exceptional year because this was when MCR dropped their sophomore album, 3 Cheers for Sweet Revenge. This album changed the game forever and peaked at number 28 on the Billboard charts and was played in many MTV music videos. Guess what it included? There are long song titles for each track of this album. It helped to make emo and post-hardcore mainstream for the first time, just like it was back in 2002, but bigger than ever, which those years were a mild success at first. God, everything was changing in the year 2004 though. Then in 2005, Fall Out Boy released their sophomore album, From Under the Cook Tree, and was more successful than 3 Cheers for Sweet Revenge, which peaked at number 8 on the Billboard. Most of the track lists on this album included long song titles. Look at this, it looks like you are reading someone's essay. Ironically, their two most popular singles on that album had short titles, Sugar We're Going Down and Dance Dance, so I guess they need a hit song. The reason why Fall Out Boy has so many long song titles was said in this interview. I think a lot of bands in the past have designed titles simply so they can fit within DJ's mouth. After the release of From Under the Cook Tree, many newer emo pop-punk bands decided to use long song titles including Panic at the Disco, All Time Low, Mayday Parade, From First to Last, and many more. Still, you even see non-emo bands like the Arctic Monkeys and Sufjan Stevens using it. The Arctic Monkeys were the fastest band to blow up, sold 100,000 copies in the first week, and went #1 on Billboard. Remember when I mentioned the song titles that has nothing to do with the actual song is about will get bigger in the 2000s? It got bigger thanks to MCR and Fall Out Boy, since newer bands will use song titles that quoted movie reference, making jokes, and self-awareness. Throughout the late 2000s and early 2010s, long song titles were still relevant by older or newer bands. Hell, some of the bands decided to use their long band's name like The World's a Beautiful Place and I'm No Longer Afraid to Die, and Empire, Empire, I Was a Lonely Estate. Pop artists were also using it. The most notable was Lana Del Rey. Since her release album, Lust for Life, she has been using long song titles and still does it. But in the mid-2010s, these long song titles were starting to fade away in mainstream music. So what happened to long song titles? Since rock and emo music was losing popularity in the mid-2010s, the long song titles were dying and became underground again. That's why it was only around during the emo revival era. Okay, at least there was that one trend in the mid to late 2010s that many song titles ended up using no spaces and just left it there to look cool. The earliest used title I can find was the rock band Manic Street Preachers and the third album, The Holy Bible, back in 1994. Their second track on this album was titled, If White America Told the Truth for One Day, This World Will Fall Apart. But the one who popularized it was 2 decades later with the rapper Bones. Before Bones went by his current stage name, he used to go by The Kid. He released various projects, but then one mixtape, A Day at the Getty in 2011, was the start of it, as he had been putting so many songs with no spaces, including album titles too. Many famous artists like Billie Eilish and XXXTentacion were doing it, but it also faded away. So now, we're in 2020s and many bands, artists barely use long song titles. The few who still use them are Lana Del Rey and Ariana Grande. Some bands still use long song titles, for example, CU Space Cowboys and Hot Mulligan have many long song titles, so you can see some bands trying to revive the 2000s emo vibe. I miss long song titles, or song titles that have nothing to do with what the actual song is about, because it was fun and the bands didn't take the song serious. Yes, I do know sometimes they do have titles with serious thing, but it felt like it was kind of a rebellious way to make fun of the industry or labels for requesting short title but give it a long song titles to show them. The trend was also huge in MySpace since many newer bands were young and started to get into social media for the first time. Nowadays, song titles have returned to short titles and even older emo or post-hardcore bands have stopped doing it. Maybe because the bands got older and started doing other genre other than music they had done before. Or it got too old for them because the long song titles became mainstream and overused. Alright, before this video is over, I'll give you the list of my favorite long song titles. I slept with someone in Fall Out Boy and all I got was a stupid song written about me by Fall Out Boy. Please don't tell my father that I used this 1996 Honda Accord to destroy the town of Willow Grove, Pennsylvania in 2002. I will never write an obligatory song about being on the road and missing someone by Say Anything. No need for introduction, I read about girls like you on the backs of the toilet doors by Bring Me the Horizon. And I got punched in the nose for sticking my face in other people's business by Boys Night Out. Thank you so much for watching my video. Consider a like and subscribe for more videos to come. I'll see you next time.